So I just wish the government would realize that it's, not the dangerous aspect that people make it out to be.
Yeah.
And same thing in your country.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not. It really isn't. We have more important things in this world to worry about than people using cannabis. So
I agree with you there 100%, Irvin.
yeah.
Look, okay, going on to another point that I wrote down here was there's a campaign in Australia at the moment. It's an ad on TV with a sloth. It's actually an animated version or something of a sloth sitting on a couch. I don't think I've seen it, but the Australian government say that cannabis makes you lazy, that you just end up on the couch doing nothing, you don't work. Now this was the other thing that I thought, well, look at Irv, 29 years, driving to work every day, stockbroker. Do you feel lazy on cannabis, Irv?
Your government has a point.
Does it?
And yes, it does. And I'll take my brokerage firm as an example.
Okay.
And the funny thing is, my owner happened to ask me this recently.
Mm.
How many of the people here in the office smoke?
Mm.
I said, about 15. Really?
Mm.
How many smoke during the day? I said, about 5.
Mm.
And are they okay? I said, oh, yes, because it makes them smarter.
Mm-hmm.
Cannabis is different for every person.
Mm.
So, especially, and one who's no longer working for us was one of the heads of our IT department.
Mm.
And I said, he gets a problem, he goes out and smokes a joint, comes back and takes care of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I said, it doesn't affect him at all. I said, then there are another 5 that don't do it because it doesn't affect them either way. They don't really get, they just don't want to do it. Then there are another 5 that, God forbid, they took 1 hit or 2 hits, they'd be wasted for the rest of the day and couldn't do anything. So when I speak to college campuses, I always look at 2 people and go, you're a procrastinator. You had a paper a month ago that your professor told you to write. It's now Sunday and it's due tomorrow. And you go, oh, shoot, I forgot all about that paper. You go and smoke a joint or 2, then you sit and write down that paper, The next day you may make some changes and then you hand it in. Now I look at the person beside him and go, you're a procrastinator. You're in the same class they're in, You had the same assignment. It's now Sunday and you forgot all about that assignment. And you go smoke a joint and you go, oh, screw it. I'm not going to write that paper. I said it makes you lethargic. It makes you a vegetable. I'm not telling you not to do it, but realize it harms you and it makes you that way. Therefore, only smoke when you can afford to be a vegetable. To the ones who makes it smarter, it really does. There are people out there that smoke and it breaks them smarter, brighter. No problem. You can smoke, do your job, no problem. You're great. So everybody's different in that respect.
Well, I would agree with that, Irv. So I wouldn't say that cannabis makes you lazy. I would say that people are born lazy. People procrastinate before they smoke the cannabis. I grew up. People don't want to do their essays, their homework, with or without cannabis. They procrastinate. That's where the word procrastinate came around before cannabis use, I think, or common, world spread cannabis use. Procrastinators have always been around prior to cannabis.
That's a good point.
I had a relative who was a programmer, like you were talking about your IT guy, who helped develop the first version of Windows with Bill Gates. And he was a genius and a daily cannabis smoker. So,
Exactly. There you go.
And Windows, the first version of Windows crashed quite a lot, I can tell you that. But I'm not going to blame him for that. I won't mention his name. But I knew him well, and I knew he was a daily smoker, and I knew he was a genius as well. And that's why Bill Gates hired him. Anyway, so we'll go away from this. I think the sloth thing. You've worked. You go to work every day.
I do.
You smoke 10 joints every day. So as far as I'm concerned, you're not a sloth, and you smoke.
Thank you.
And you've smoked 120,000 joints. But I was going to mention that we're having a bit of trouble with the ASX at the moment over here in Australia. Our stocks aren't doing so well. You're not the cause of that, are you, Irvin?
No, actually, I used to make a lot of money on Australian currency.
Did you?
And the problem is, again, from China and the rest of the world now, they're just not buying minerals, and that's what y'all are known for.
Yeah.
And so therefore, Australia is really down, and I have clients in New Zealand, and so it's been tough. And right now, with the markets worldwide, there is nothing good. I mean, United States is the best place to be.
Yep.
And what that means is that we live in a really lousy neighborhood, and we have the nicest house. Mm-hmm. But the whole neighborhood sucks. You know? You know? But we have the nicest house. That's the way the world economy is right now.
That's just going to make you a target.
It might be. It might be. But, you know, we in this country have the best thing going on. But right now, it's all, I mean, they just showed that with Obama, when he got into office, it was $11.7 trillion deficit. It's now 17.8. I mean, he's increased it by almost 50%. So are we doing that much better? Not really. We should print a lot more money. You know, and that's what Europe is doing, and that's what other countries are doing, just printing money. Well, that's going to come back and bite us, all of us. So I wish I could tell you, hey, give me a call because I can invest your money and make you a fortune. Right now, and not things are that good. Aren't that good?
I wish I had money to call you, Irvin. Now, okay, for another question I have is increased use. Have you increased the amount of cannabis you've smoked over the years, or if you just maintained that 10 joint per day, 33 years?
I've maintained that 10 joints a day for 33 years. I haven't had to increase it or anything like that. And you know, it's funny. I travel around the country and I meet people and they all go, hey, you don't get high? Well, you got to try this. You're going to get wasted. And so I might try it to see what it does medically for me and if I'd get high. And guess what? I don't get high. And they look at me like I was funny in like 96. These two guys in California who had the top best stuff, and they gave it to me, and we went to my hotel room and rolled it. And that back in 96, I could smoke in the hotel, in the meetings and everything else. This was a normal conference, National Organization for Reform Marijuana Laws. So we rolled up like 3 ounces of the way I roll it, and I'm smoking in the conference and and everything else. That Friday night we party. The next day around lunchtime, they come up to me. They go, Irvin, how much of that do you have left? I go, about 1.5 ounces. They go, no offense. We're tired of seeing you waste good pot. You really don't get high. Would you give it back to us? I said, well, I feel better. I said, medically I do feel better. I said, but I'll give you back half of it. Half is left.
That was generous. Generous of you, Irv. Generous.
Yeah. Well, the point was, but the thing is, I just don't get a euphoric effect off of it. So,
okay. Well, have you tried edibles, oils?
Yes.
Raw cannabis?
All the above.
All the above,
yeah. All the above.
And
the only time something happened to me was in Canada about 4 years ago. I was at a conference called Treating Yourself, and they picked me up at the airport, and they took me to a vape room, and I tried some top grade, 29% THC, 28%, whatever it was, and they said, "Well, you got to be high off that." I go, nothing. They go, we're going to get you high. And they called it butter, B-U-D-D-E-R, which was an extract. And it's one of those dab things that you put on a dabber or whatever. Well, and they told me, they said, Irvin, when you take the hit, don't take as big a hit, but it's going to expand in your chest and it's going to hurt you. It's really going to actually hurt you. You're going to feel pain, but you're going to get high off this. Okay, well, Sean, I'll try it. Sure enough, I held it in. Sure enough, my chest started hurting. I blew it out. And they go, what do you feel? I go, nothing. I don't get high. So I'm standing because I just got off the plane, like an hour ago, and I'm still standing. And so I'm standing for about 8 minutes, and all of a sudden, a light switch went off, meaning I was perfectly straight. The next second, I was completely ripped, completely stoned. I mean, I couldn't drive. I couldn't talk on the phone. I couldn't trade stocks. I couldn't do anything if I had to. And when it hit me, it's like, oh my God. And they looked at my eyes, because they'd seen my eyes before that. They go, now your eyes are really messed up. I go, oh, this is great. How long is this going to last? They said 2 to 3 hours. Oh, so we had time before we go to the conference before I had to speak, so that's fine, no problem. So about 4 minutes later, I sat down. As I'm sitting down, I'm going through clouds. I mean, it's like clouds, layers of clouds. I'm sitting down. And these 3 guys are talking about subjects that I would be interested in, but I'm just happy. I'm just sitting back, not doing anything. And I'm thinking 2 to 3 hours. Oh, this is great. I've never been high in my life. 4 minutes went by. Boom, it was gone. Okay, I yelled to them. I looked at them. I said, it's gone. They go, your eyes are perfectly normal. I said, it's gone. They go, that's weird. So it took 8 minutes to come on, and for 8 minutes I was wasted. Not high, but I was wasted. Loved it. And then it was gone.
Well, it's interesting you say use the term wasted, because in Australia they've used that term, I don't know, maybe it was 10, 15 years ago. Wasted was one of the expressions people used when they got high. Oh, yeah, I'm really wasted. But on you, cannabis really is wasted, Irv.
Yeah, it is.
So
it is.
maybe
It
you
is.
coined the phrase, someone gave you, wasted that was. We shouldn't have gave it to Irv. So maybe you started it, Irv. Maybe that's where the expression wasted came from over here. It was originally someone tried to give Irv a joint and he wouldn't get high.
That's funny. I like that.
Okay, any negative effects of cannabis use that you can think of?
There have not been any negative aspects of using cannabis, period.
Right.
That's simple. That's simple. It's just been nothing at all. It's not interfered with my life. And if anything, it's made me a better person in my life. Because without it, if I was still alive, which I'm not sure if I would be, I would have died of a hemorrhage, or one of the tumors would have gone malignant. Because see, another aspect of it is the second disorder I have, which was diagnosed at age 22, says that every tumor I have can grow, and I can develop new ones, even though, I'm not growing or anything like that. I've not developed a tumor since I was 21. And the doctors have no idea why. Well, I think it's the cannabis. Okay, is the reason I haven't. So therefore, because of the cannabis, I've been able to lead a very productive life. Where I don't know how many people in Australia are on disability payments because they physically can't work. But in Florida, we have a lot. Okay, so they can't work. Well, guess what? I'd be one of those people if I was alive and didn't have cannabis. But because of the right medicine, I'm a productive member of society. So that's what I want to make people, not only to help our taxes and everything else, to get people off the rolls where they get doled out money, but the point is it gives them a better quality of life. And that's what's so important to everybody. And that's what cannabis has done to me. So, when people ask me, you won an 82, why don't you just sit back and do nothing? And I always say, my bone disorder sucks. I didn't ask for it. But what I've done with this bone disorder is I've taken it and I've helped millions and millions of people worldwide. So it's like I almost want to stick my finger up into my bone disorder and say, you see, because of you, look what I've done. Because if I didn't have it, none of this would have happened. I mean, granted, I wish I didn't have it. I mean, bone disorder sucks. But you make something good come out of something bad. Yep. And that's what I've done, and that's what I want to see people worldwide to be able to do, to live their life the best way they can with whatever affliction they have. Because, again, they didn't ask for it. I mean, people don't wake up tomorrow morning and say, God, if I can just get cancer and go through chemotherapy, maybe I can get marijuana to take away the nausea. And in our country, AIDS. I mean, gee, if I could just get AIDS, then, from all the drugs I have to take, I can use marijuana and take away the problems with the AIDS medicine. Nobody does that.
Yep.
But God forbid something does happen. It's nice to know that there's something out there that can help you.
That's interesting, Irv. Everything you're saying is fascinating. I just remembered as you were talking a question I wanted to write down, and I forgot about it. And because of all the I'm always having technical computer problems, whether it's websites or some program or something. Anyway, I was thinking your cannabis is supplied from University of Mississippi. Is that correct?
That's where they grow it. Yeah, it's not supplied by University of Mississippi. It's a private contractor. That's where they grow it. Correct.
Okay. Now, in Australia, they've been talking about they're trying to control who regulates cannabis. And a lot of the pharmaceutical industries are saying that the cannabis that we have is not your backyard cannabis. It's not the cannabis that everyone grows and sells illegally. Ours is medical cannabis. It's so much different than the backyard cannabis. It's dangerous and everything, you know, all this sort of stuff. Now, the cannabis you smoke is not grown as, in inverted commas, medical cannabis, is it, Irv?
It is considered medical cannabis.
Well,
and
why?
they grow it in different strains. They grow it in different strains, and now they're growing a lot more starting this year for medical research. Now, I don't know of any legal grows in Australia. Okay, could be, but I don't know of any pharmaceutical company.
There isn't any at the moment. They're trying to.
I didn't think so.
They're trying to do it at Christmas Island, but they're having problems.
I didn't think so. But the point being is the only argument they can make is standardization. Meaning we grow a plant, we get it approved, and then we clone the plant. Therefore, you're getting the same medicine today, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. Because it's been cloned from that one plant that we grew.
Sure.
And so that's the standardization. But you know, the way I look at it is this. The plant they give me is the same plant they give Elvie for glaucoma and the other patients. Well, you know, there's so many different strains of cannabis. You're just telling me this, the one strain is best for Elvie, for glaucoma, and best for me with a bone disorder. I find that hard to believe.
Well,
okay. So therefore...
I'm sorry, Irv, I'm just thinking when you first started, there wasn't such a thing as medical cannabis. The government would have got cannabis seeds from wherever they could have got cannabis seeds probably from a hippie, and then started, and then thought, oh, well, bugger, you know, this Irvin Rosenfeld, he's won the case, he's beat us in the, you know, to have the right to, you know, have medical cannabis for his condition. And I don't think there would have been any discussion about, well, what sort of strain should we grow for Irv? And it would just be, well, there's a cannabis seed, put it in the ground and let's go for it.
That's basically the case. It's a strain that they use. It's a combination of Mexican and Jamaican, which is not very strong.
Right.
And yeah, they still had to call it medical because that's the only way they could have the farm in Mississippi, to say that, you know, we're going to use this for medical use.
Right.
But it's a ruse because the federal government has never used this for medical use. I mean, they don't want to know that it works for medical use. Otherwise, the laws would have been changed. I mean, the funny thing is, the only time the government ever used me for something was in 1983, 84. I get a phone call from the Navy Department. And one of the biggest hospitals happened to be in Portsmouth, Virginia, which is my hometown. And they go that we had an admiral test positive for marijuana. And he said it's from secondhand smoke from a party. And we want to believe him. You know, you're one of two patients. You're right here in the city. Is there anybody that's around you ingesting marijuana or secondhand smoke that's never smoked before? I go, my father. We had a furniture business at the time. So for 6 hours a day, we're in an enclosed room that I'm smoking all the time. And he's never smoked at all. So I said, sure, Dad will be glad to piss in a bottle. You know, bring the you know, send a orderly or whatever, and he'll piss in a bottle. So we did that. A week later, the Navy Department called me. The doctor called me and said, Irvin, are you sure he's never smoked marijuana before? I go, yeah, I'm positive. I keep joking with him, hey, Dad, you got to try this, but he never would. Never has. And I said, what did it show? He said negative. That he did not test positive for ingesting marijuana. Okay. So that's the only time. So now years later, I'm a board member of Patients Out of Time, which is in our country the only organization that is sanctioned to teach doctors and nurses about medical cannabis, to where they get continuing education credit. Well, one of the founders was a commander in the Navy. And I told him the story. He said, Irvin, I remember that. He said, that was a story they gave you. There was never an admiral that tested positive. They wanted to know that if somebody argued that point, is it any truth to that? So that's why they made up that story about an admiral. He said, I remember that. He said, you know, it came back negative, that, you know, there wasn't such a thing as secondhand smoke. And so that's the only time the federal government's ever utilized my protocol. You know, which is sad because, you know, it's not like I'm hiding. They know where I am. I mean, they can find me. They can do research. They can do whatever they want. and I'm glad to do it. You know, my old doctor from 1990 to 95, who's public, Dr. Sanchez Ramos, he can go to any medical conference anywhere in the world and talk about me. I mean, there's no HIPAA laws or whatever. I mean, you can't talk about your patients, and vice versa. I can go anywhere I want, and I can talk about him. I mean, he was my doctor for 5 years, and this is what we did. This is a study that we did, and and nobody wants to utilize it. And now this is now 20 years later, 21 years later, and it's just, here I am, not hiding.
No. They're doing great by the looks of it, Irv. Now, look, we're going to sort of slowly end this interview, but I wanted to ask you, is there any questions that I haven't asked that you feel need to be addressed or answered?
Not really. I mean,
because you've been interviewed so many times. Sorry, Irv, you've been interviewed so many times, and I've seen a lot of similar questions. I thought, well, maybe the interviewer hasn't asked the right questions, and I thought maybe you're waiting for this question to be asked.
I wish that was the case.
I'm glad to hear it. That means I've done my job well.
You have. And I'm very happy to be able to do this interview, and hopefully this gets all over Australia, and and teach people that, hey, it's not as bad as people make it out to be as far as harmful. It's not at all harmful. Yep. And I'm living proof. Yep.
Well, we know that, and we've just got to educate the rest of the public to that. Now, coming to the next thing that I'd like to end off with is that Irvin Rosenfeld has a book.
Yes.
That I'd like to promote on my website, which is medicalmarijuana.com.au. And I'd like to see people buy this book and listen to the Irvin Rosenfeld story, because it's a pretty crazy story. There's not many books like it.
No, that's very true. It's my history as far as cannabis and my bone disorder, and then the history of the medical marijuana movement in the United States as seen through my eyes. Now, normally I would tell people to go to my website, but for whatever reason it was hacked, and it's now down. So what I would say to you is this: have them send the money to you. And with shipping, because shipping to Australia is very expensive, have them ship. They'd have to send at least $50 to you, and give me their address, and then you would send me the money, and then with the addresses and everybody else, I'd give them a signed, personalized copy, and send it back to them, to their address in Australia. But yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, 4 years ago, when I wrote the book, it was like $7. Now it's like $30 to ship a book to Australia. It's ridiculous. Well, so I appreciate that, and they should want to get my book. I mean, it's very interesting. It's totally interesting, especially for people who are trying to convince somebody of the benefits, whether it's your family, whether it's other doctors, whatever the case may be. They read my book, they're going to realize, oh my God, this is real. This is a real person. Yep. Look what he did. Yep. Look what he's overcome, and look what he accomplished by using medical cannabis. So anything you can do, I appreciate it.
It is an unbelievable story, and I mean, I didn't do this interview for the book at all. I'm not. I probably don't want to take the money as well, but we'll organise something that people can. I'll help you out there and where I can, so that they can give you the money and you can send them the book. And I'm sure $50 people are prepared to pay for it. There won't be a problem. But I'll advertise. I'll advertise the book on my site. I'll organise something with your wife Heidi that she can send me some images, and we can put it up there, and we'll do a little blog on it, or a little article on it, and we'll do something with it, Irv. But I want to really say that this isn't an advertisement for your book. It's just what this was is to clarify the questions that I've asked. But I'd like to see people support you and also buy the book as well, because it is a great story, and you're an interesting character, and you're articulate, and you're smart, and you've smoked cannabis for the last 34 years, is it? 34 years?
33. I'm on my 34th year now under the federal government.
Right.
Yes. And again, before that, I smoked for 11 years before it became legal.
So what's that make it?
45 years?
45 years.
Yeah.
And doing pretty well by the looks of it.
No, I am. And again, this wasn't about my book. This is all about trying to help patients.
I know it is.
That's why I did it. And again, I wrote the book because the first patient, Bob Randall, there were things that happened in this country and worldwide that people didn't know about.
No.
If he hadn't have written his book, we never would have known it. Well, he wrote his book and then died like a year later from AIDS. So we didn't get to enjoy it. So I realized about 8 years ago, I'm not getting any younger. And there are things that have happened in my life, and everything with the movement that people would not know about.
No.
And so if I die, it all dies with me. And I said, Bob did it as he was dying of AIDS. I've got to do it. I've got to write my book. And so I did, and it's very important that it's out there now, and I feel very proud about it. But more importantly, it's, to always just, help patients. That's why I did it.
Yeah. Well, I'd never heard of your book. I'd never heard of Irvin Rosenfeld up until about several months ago, when a friend who's researching cannabis had said to me, "Have you heard of this guy, Irvin Rosenfeld?" And I said, "No." And when I heard the story, and then I saw some of your interviews and your famous aluminium canister with 300 joints in it, I thought, wow, this is an interesting story. Then when I realized they were all straight cannabis, no tobacco, you worked as a stockbroker for 29 years, you drove to work, I thought, wow, I've got to interview this guy. He's living proof of, and so hence our conversation today. But look, I'd like to, ending off, I'd like to thank you and Heidi so much for bearing with me with the technical issues, and I really hope this interview is actually recorded on my program.
Yeah, I hope so.
Look,
too.
I remember everything you've said anyway, Irv, and it was a pleasure. Either way, it was always a pleasure talking to you, and maybe I'll meet you one day. You never know.
That would be great.
It would be great.
Appreciate it. Okay, Steve.
Thanks very much, Irv, and I'll say goodbye.
Right.
And
So long. Take care.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.